I hope everybody is having a great start to the new year, and I appreciate everybody who watches my videos and comes to my channel. If you haven't, of course, consider subscribing. But if you're not getting the answers that you're looking for, consider coming over to my Patreon page. This is a great place to get direct access to me, where I can help answer your questions and also get help from other top shooters to answer questions if I don't have the answer you're looking for. You can participate in things like this live stream that I'm about to show you some snippets from. You can also participate in the drawings for free product and get discount codes for products over on my website. Overall, I think it's a great value. I try to make it affordable for everybody, and I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to get out and get on target, shoot better, hunt better, or just plink better. So with that, enjoy the live stream that's coming up here, or at least the snippets of it, and consider joining my Patreon page. The details are down in the description below. Have a great day, enjoy the new year, and enjoy the snippets here. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So this one was 100% on me. And can you guys see that rifle on the ground? Can you guys see that? Yeah. So that's not on the ground because it's supposed to be. That's what happens when a $10,000 rifle falls off your bench accidentally. And that one was 100% on me. So what had happened is I had it in my bench vise, and I sometimes am really lazy about leaving it in my bench vise. And at my old house, because of how I had everything set up, my barrel always was angled over my bench when it was in the bench vise. So even if it came loose or something, it would just fall like 2 or 3 inches and kind of just lay on the bench. And I never really had that happen, but it was always there to protect it. Well, I wasn't thinking. I had just finished cleaning the gun. It was late in the evening. I ran in the house and totally forgot that I had left my gun in the vise because I got busy with stuff. For those that know, my wife's still recovering from surgery, and it's just been a nightmare of a month and a half. So I got busy doing stuff, and it's not like I put a massive clamp on my gun when I'm cleaning it. So over the course of the night, it apparently walked out and flipped over and landed on the scope when it fell there. And you can see that in the picture here, you can see that it snapped this off. It snapped the sunshade off the front of the objective. So I obviously pulled the gun apart, looked at everything except the scope, which is going to be funny here in a second when I show you. But I looked at the sunshade, pulled a different sunshade out, screwed it on the front of the scope, said, oh, great, the sunshade took the damage. Nothing's wrong with the objective. I actually looked through the scope. It looked fine, like glass-wise. Pulled my gun apart, retorqued everything back down, and I had to go out to the range later that day. And so I took it with me, and I figured, okay, I'll just function fire it, make sure everything's safe. I get out to the range, and I'm just going to show you here real quick. So this is what my sunshade looked like when I picked it up. And you can see here's the fallen sunshade and then the regular sunshade. That is what my scope looked like when I got to the range and realized I couldn't dial any elevation. So I'm going to tell you when you're I don't care how much your scope costs, but when your scope looks like that because of something stupid you did, your heart kind of sinks. So it is currently on its way back to Japan, and I'm going to be scopeless, at least on that gun, for probably a few months now. And it's going to be it's not going to be a cheap fix by any means because the erector is completely bent. Like I can't even get the cap off. The entire erector is bent. It took a pretty decent hit. And it flipped. I know it flipped over and landed basically on it. So, it had 22 pounds of gun on it when it landed like that. So, it's totally on me, and, stuff happens, and, it super sucks. Okay, Brendan. I know Brendan's here. Good afternoon. Hope you're well. Questions about tuner testing. If you recall, I had seating depth tests that produced 1/4 to 1/3 shot groups over 4 seating depths in a row. How do I deploy the tuner in this scenario? That test was shot with the tuner at 0 flush to the barrel. My thought was to turn the tuner out 1 full revolution and then find nodes in both directions, out and in. What would you do? So, yeah, so how people use tuners is definitely evolving. And I think, this last year, this last 1 to 2 years has definitely seen a huge push in the use of tuners, especially in F class. And I think it's pretty tough to walk the line and not see tuners on most of the guns. And it's sort of weird because I'm the first one to admit that tuners 100% work. They definitely do something. How you sort of deploy it, as you said, is going to depend. So I know that there's a whole camp of people that, so let me tell you like the best way. Like if you really want like the hands down, get the perfect answer about what your tuner's doing, then you have to load up a bunch of ammo. Like we're talking burn a barrel out amount of ammo and spend probably a couple days, like start to finish at the range. Or if you have your own range or a range where you can leave your gear and not worry about it getting stolen or something, then you could go and come back. But ideally, what you would do is you would go out to the range first thing in the morning, you take all your environmental numbers down, and then you would shoot across at, the same point of aim across, and you would move the tuner, whatever, some number, right? Like depending on the tuner you're using, 5 or 10 increments, right? So you shoot an entire string of maybe 1 revolution or a full 2 revolutions or whatever you want to do on those environmentals, and you look at your groups, right? So how they're grouping, do they go in and out, and where do they go in and out? And then you come back in an hour, and then you come back in 2 hours, and then you come back in 3 hours, and 4 and 5 and 6, and you do that for the entire day, so that with the same load across an entire day with all the environmentals for that day, you can track where did the tightest groups go. So in the morning, it might be on 0 tune when it's 50 degrees and it's damp out. And then maybe throughout the day, it's drying out and it's getting warmer. And you're seeing that, 20 marks in or 50 marks in or whatever starts to produce it. So then you can start building a profile. Then there's the sort of like what Brendan was asking about, which is, okay, I'm going to take a load that I know is just hammering, and I've been testing in a given condition, and I'm going to kind of see where this sine wave of my nodes are in that tuner. And you can do that if you shoot a horizontal test with a bunch of aim points, and you do like on a Cortina tuner, like my V2 one, you might be like perfectly at 0, and then maybe you go 10 or 20, and you'll see it sort of go tight and then open and then tight and then open and tight and then open. And that could be every 20 marks or 30 marks or, 1 full revolution. There's a lot of variables that go into it. But in a general sense, if you go to a match somewhere and for whatever reason, whether it's hotter, more humid, whatever the case is, your groups start opening up, you can say, okay, well, I know at 20 marks, I had another tight one. Okay, well, those harmonics might be better in those given conditions for you. And then maybe you try another one in your ciders. So you might go to you might kind of hopscotch to a couple different spots. And I would say kind of in general, that's sort of what I do. Sort of I don't want to call it like a willy-nilly because that makes it sound like it shouldn't work, but there's sort of I'm trying to think here. So I would say in general, there's sort of if it's hotter, if it starts getting really hot out compared, like let's say you were shooting really tight groups in the morning and starts getting really hot, a lot of people would say, well, you need to bring your tuner in. If it's getting cold or it's really cold out, push your tuner out. And so there's sort of well, I'm just going to come in some arbitrary amount. So I'm going to, maybe my gun's opening up a little bit, and I'm just going to bring it in 10 marks and see if it tightens up. Okay, I'll go another 10, see if it tightens up, another 10, see if it tightens up. So it's sort of a ad hoc kind of situation. And so, those, I'd say that's kind of like the 3 ways that you can approach using a tuner. I'm currently shooting a JTS built gun with a no turn 284 neck I might have just reached the limits of my 700 action, and that's 100% probably what it is, that have been modified as far as you can take it. And that might be my limiting factor. Currently shooting 200 scores with 15 to 18, a very large amount of time at 600 in not best conditions. So I'm gonna work your question backwards because it
Okay.
almost answers itself, right?
Yeah.
So what if I go backwards from this? First off, if you're shooting consistently with a 200 and then a 15 to 18x, I'm probably going to say you really shouldn't be worrying about anything. Now, I know that's easy to say because we all probably go down this rabbit hole of it could be better because I could be shooting 20x's every time.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to piece together here, though, as I was reading this earlier, is it what we would call an ugly 15 to 18x, meaning sure,
Yes.
15 to 18 of them are here, but I'm losing some wide ones, or are you getting squeakers on those other 2 to 5 shots?
Wide ones.
So that would be the first question I have.
Yeah, wide ones.
Wide. Okay. So if it's not here, it's out here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that is going to be 100%. I can almost guarantee that's 100% answered by the line above it, which is I'm shooting a Remington 700.
Okay. All right.
So there is to achieve the level that you're trying to achieve is going to be very, very tough with any kind of 700. Now, that's not to put down the 700 because clearly you are kicking ass with it, but the ignition system is never going to be on par with a bat or a Borden, a Paragon. Like any of those, you are going to have such a refined ignition system, and that is like I can't even begin to tell you the difference that you're going to notice when you go to a custom 700 action.
Okay.
And so that very well could be the difference. Now, there could be something else now you had Jeremy built the gun, so I'm going to rule out bedding.
Yeah.
Because that would be the other thing, right? Like if you have any imperfections in your bedding, that can cause some errant shots. But if you're shooting, like there's probably, 18 other people here that are rolling their eyes going, man, what are you complaining about if you're shooting, 15 to 18 X's a large amount of the time? But, and this is where it gets tough. The more you shoot, you start saying, well, it was a really nice 15X or it was an ugly 15X.
Yeah.
And people kind of roll their eyes at that because they go, well, what is, like, I don't understand because 15X's is 15X's, and that's a 100% not true. And so if you're shooting 15X's and you're worried about the other 5 being 9s, that's a problem. And that's not a fun feeling to have when you're shooting, as opposed to I shot 15X's and I should have had 5 other X's, but they just poked out. Yeah. Do you mind if I read the other question you wrote me about? Because I think it's a good one for people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Lee also asked, like, I go through a lot of these questions and try to bring them up here. But so Lee also asked, not necessarily for this, but I thought it was a good question, which is, I've used Berger 180s for a long, long time in several different chambers. Have I seen any indication that bullets have similar precision results at certain muzzle velocities? So he is saying, the more I work on internal factors like seating depth, neck tension, primer depth, etc., the more I am thinking once the bullet is uncorked, the consistency of speed is the major factor for point of impact equaling point of aim. So is there a muzzle velocity you find the most consistent between different cases, or am I overthinking the idea that a bullet likes certain speeds for a given distance? Although I don't even think that's relevant. But and so my answer largely was that yes, I do think that in a general sense, if you went and talked to, and I'm just obviously in this case F-class shooters, if you went and talked to 100 F-class shooters and they were being honest with you, and you said, hey, and they all shot 180s, right? And you said, hey, what velocity are you shooting? I would probably argue that no matter what cartridge they're shooting, whether it's a 284, whether it's a Shaheen, whether it's a PRCW, you're going to find that most everybody is shooting either somewhere in the 2790 to 2820 range, kind of a 27 or 2875 range, a 2920, 2930 range, or a 2960, 2970 range. Now, does that mean that they're always going to shoot better at that range? No. But there is sort of a general consensus that if you shoot them in that range, you'll at least be pretty accurate. Um, so so is it like an easy button for people to just be able to load up and go pick a velocity? Yeah, in a weird way, it kind of is, but I don't think that it should ever circumvent good load workup. And he's not the only person. Like I get a lot of people that say, because a lot of people kind of chase the the fastest thing they can shoot. And one of the biggest questions I get is, do you think I'm at the top end of my pressure, or do you think I'm getting too much pressure, or something regarding pressure? And what I told him is that I'm a believer that if you're asking me if it's too much pressure, it's probably too much pressure, right? Like if you're looking for somebody to validate that you should be shooting something that feels like it's over pressuring, then you probably already know. And I personally, just me, would never green light somebody intentionally shooting something at a higher pressure than it's probably still safe given the actions and the barrels and everything. But like I just don't see any reason to force your gun into a situation where, as I put it, it's not happy, right? Like I want my gun to be happy. And if you have a high-end gun, if you have any gun, but especially if you have a custom built high-end gun that everything, like all your ignition systems, everything's working great. When it's happy, you know it. And that's it's really hard to impart on somebody what a happy gun feels like until you've shot a happy gun. But if you've ever been to a match or you've just been at the range and you feel like you're just fighting, like, well, if I move a little to the right, it just doesn't necessarily go, to the right, or if I move to the left, it doesn't go to the left, like it still kind of groups outside and you're kind of fighting the gun. Well, your gun's not happy, right? Like if you've got a gun that's happy, you move, it moves. You kind of, it goes where you put it, and you're driving it right where you want. If you miss the X by, half a line, and you move half a line and boom, you catch it. Well, now you know that you've got a gun that is happy. And I typically find that people who are pushing pressures, pushing velocities, you may get a really tight load. You may have something that works really well, but it doesn't necessarily mean your gun's happy. And if it's not happy, it's probably going to throw a fit at some point. Appreciate everybody being a Patreon member here, and I'm hoping next month I will have another giveaway for everybody. I think that's been fun. Like I said, I know Larry won one and gave away a Wheeler kit, and I don't know. I've got some other stuff up here we can have some fun doing some giveaways with. So I got some toys up here.
Oh, yeah.
We'll find something, and we'll have some fun. So anyway, thanks again as always, everybody. You guys have a good night. We'll talk later.